Joining us right now from The Athletic, the one, the only Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam. Okay, I can't hear him. I could hear the dog. Did he mute the dog?
No, I had muted because of the dog. I got you. Sorry. What's up, guys?
How are you?
Lovely. How are you?
I always enjoy. The funny thing is every time, here's the thing. Every time we interview Sam, it goes on YouTube and it does phenomenal numbers, in part because it also gets aggregated by other basketball people that aggregate it. So what is always hilarious to me is that they always start the interview at the beginning. They don't cut it to when we start talking. So everyone around the country that is watching this aggregated interview is going to be hearing about cheese omelets, Sam's dog, and then finally we'll get to the meat and potatoes, Sam, which is Doug Christie as the continuing coach of the Sacramento Kings. I'll say it again. I said it before. My issues have absolutely nothing to do with Doug. I love him. I wish him well. I hope he does phenomenal, and I could make a great argument that he earned the opportunity. But Sam, my worry is how much of a process, if any, was there. Were there any interviews? Was Scott Perry just taking phone calls? What do you know, if anything, on the process leading into the rehiring, I guess, of Doug Christie?
To be honest, not a ton.
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll talk to you next. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's, and I'm not going to fill the void with too much speculation, but I do, I don't mind admitting that I was a little struck by this the rollout and the lack of insight about why the choice was made. It does. I mean, yes, like until further notice, it feels very much like this was, unofficially.
Preordained.
What's that? Yeah. I mean, because it would have been one thing if it was like, here's Doug on, we're gonna pick up the option on his deal, like we talked about last week, and kind of show that he can really do the job, and it was like something where the organization got who they wanted, but he was gonna have to show the new GM that he had the chops. This is where it seemed like it was going all along, where it's a multi-year deal. I don't have all the details, but I think it's a fairly lengthy deal. And
2 years in a team option. I'm sorry. We were guessing 2 years in a team option.
I don't know. I don't want to I don't want to get angry because I don't know what's accurate. I've had people say it might even be longer. So, with, the money being certainly on the lower end of the league scale, if not the lowest, but, I don't know. I think the thing that did strike me is like there hasn't been any messaging, even behind the scenes, about here's what we were thinking. There's actually been a fair amount of just like nothing to see here. Yep, he's the coach. So that vibe definitely got my attention.
Sam, obviously, I think what will be important for Doug going forward is who is a part of his coaching staff. So when he takes over, you just kind of jump in and you coach. He just had to go. Like there was no runway for him. Any word or thought where he might lean or the organization may want him to lean as far as some of his assistants going forward?
No, I certainly, just in terms of NBA, business, and anytime you have a head coach without a ton of experience,
and the horn.
What was that?
That was Chris messing around and accidentally hitting the wrong button. It's okay.
Got you. Yeah. I could see them certainly trying to. I mean, he needs some of his people in there in terms of, coaches who he trusts, because there's a chicken or the egg component to the last coaching staff, and we've talked about it. Like, Doug was within his right to wonder how, kind of committed some of the assistants were, because they were Mike Brown guys. But honestly, those guys, from the sense I got, they were, like he was a little even overly paranoid about that component, and they were really willing to help, and he kept assistants at an arm's length. so the chicken or the egg thing is, is that just his nature, or is it a product of the environment and the situation last year? So now the question becomes, what does it look like and what does he look like as a head coach if you get people who he trusts around him, but you've got to get, experience in there, and you've got to get voices where you have multiple perspectives all the time that are actually being taken into account, which, he was pretty siloed off for a lot of his head coaching tenure last year. So for sure, I think that's the next evolution here.
We're talking to Sam Amick of The Athletic. I've been having something go through my brain all day, and I'm not trying to convince you or make a point. I'm very naive about this stuff. So I just want to run it by you. And again, I keep doing this, but I got to forget that I love Doug and I'm happy he's the coach and all that personally. I'd be asking this if it was if it was Fred Christie in the same spot. So it's a multi-year deal. They held on to Doug. And I find myself wondering, well, hold on, just from a negotiation standpoint, why a multi-year deal? Why not because there was a thought, I'd heard whispers, I think you may have heard the same, that there might be a who knows, maybe a prove it deal. They just keep going through the next year. And no, all respect to Doug, but what leverage is there? What if they were to say to him, hey, we're just going to, give you a little bit more money, but keep you on this year to see see how it goes. We're already going to be on the hook with Mike Brown for another 2+ years. What is Doug's agent going to say? No, because, and again, all respect to Doug, I'm not entirely sure there's an NBA head coaching job at this point in his career for any of the other 29 teams. So what do you think the motivation was behind the Kings giving him such a long-term contract?
I love you, Dave. You ask these questions, the answer already. Like it's because it's the Kings and he's a beloved King. It doesn't matter. You're part of the VIP club. I mean, that's it. And it's a disservice to Doug in some respects because, he deserves a chance to show that he can coach, and, and that's, again, he's benefiting from it. But it's because in the absence of direction and in terms of the franchise and positivity, and this is just my own commentary. Yes, there's a strong element of, let's just keep going with this direction because we can make people feel warm and fuzzy with one of the former Kings running the way. It's a similar running the show. It's, similar dynamic that when Vlade was the GM. I mean, Vlade had absolutely no shot at being a front office executive, at least a lead one, anywhere else in the NBA. I mean, if you're consistently hiring people who aren't considered employable elsewhere in the same position, that's probably worth looking at.
Do you think, we always kind of do the caveat, Sam, that it's one of 30 jobs, right? But Scott Perry being brought in is kind of thought of as a well-respected and has earned that over his career. Do you think other coaches even felt like they had a chance if they were interested? I'm just going to throw out Taylor Jenkins, and I don't know, anybody else that might be looking for another head coaching job, do you think they thought they even had a realistic chance?
I mean, the coaching agents who typically have those conversations and who represent those people did not ever actually think this job was open. So that's kind of all you got to know.
So again, Pete was a rookie GM. Vlade was a rookie GM. Monty was a rookie GM. Vlade was a blast from the past. Doug, by definition, is a Sacramento legend. And I guess you could technically call Scott Perry a retread for the team. Technically, I mean, he was here. And again, when we talk about motivations for hiring a GM and motivations for hiring a coach, I'm not trying to disrespect Doug's ability or Scott Perry's ability, but it does seem like Vivek and the franchise are continuing down this road of the devils,
Yeah, and that's where, Scott's in a tricky spot because, on his own merit, he's had a fantastic career outside of Sacramento. But yes, there is there was a unique angle to the job that he obviously had because of that short tenure before. and the relationship with Vivek that had remained since then. So, I mean, we talked about it last week. Like that's been the question: is how is he going to thread the needle of having gotten the job, partly or largely because of that history, while doing the job in the most legitimate way possible, and with following his own instincts and his own desires and making his own decisions rather than just placating to an unhealthy degree with what the owner wants to do.
And it did seem, and I granted, I know, Sam, that the players, when they're on their exit meetings, are, and they're in front of the media, they're not going to say anything about their current, even though he was interim at the time. But it did seem overwhelmingly positive from the current players on a roster that, by a lot of accounts, underachieved from what the organization wanted to do. Did you get that feeling, though, just genuinely, that the players were believers in Doug Christie?
Some, not all, for sure. I mean, I think Zach Levine has made some public comments. I actually talked to Zach after the play-in loss and just didn't end up using the interview, but it was an on-the-record conversation, and he had said very positive things about Doug. I mean, this stuff kind of ebbs and flows, right? So I don't know exactly where it landed with every guy, but I mean, throughout the course of the back end of the season, there was this kind of hilarious story arc where you had the players being, a big reason they were down on Mike Brown was too many practices, too intense, never taking a breath, and like too much, right? And so that was the idea with Mike. And then with Doug, in the early days, it was a breath of fresh air because he was more of a player's coach and wasn't pushing as hard. But then by the end of the season, it was, we don't practice enough. Like, it was just, it had gone full circle in some player circles, if that makes sense. And I mean, the guy that I'm curious about, we've talked about him a lot too, is Sabonis.
Yep.
Because and it's not that it's personal, it's just basketball. But yes, I know for a fact that he spent a fair amount of the second half of the season, whether it was on Doug or just the roster or whatever it is, like he did not enjoy the style of offense they were playing. And, and I think at least part of that blame or kind of responsibility in his mind was on the coach. So no, it wasn't. I don't think it was roses across the board when it comes to the player feedback.
And I want to be clear, look, Doug was basically hired in an airplane runway before the Lakers trip. Had to deal with that, had to deal with Fox and that messy exit, had to insert Zach Levine and Jonas Valanciunas, Kevin Huerter leaving, Jake LaRavia, on and on and on. Had to deal with a ton of stuff, and now he has the opportunity to have whatever this roster is going to look like, his own training camp, a year to figure out how to play with these players and really get a fair shot where we get to see what he can do and by proxy what the roster can do. So I want to be clear, and Sam, you can push back if you wish, if there is anything to push back on. This isn't about, doubting Doug or doubting Scott Perry or whatever. It's just simply worrying about the process, the continual process that the Kings have used in the past that they seem to keep using to make decisions which have led to abject failure over the last 12 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I know this is self-serving. I'm sitting here thinking, like, and focus on Doug for a second. Like, you've kind of alluded to your relationship with him. He and I have always gotten along, and I'd be lying if I didn't admit that during this time, while I'm, fairly routinely giving my 2 cents on his position, if I wasn't mildly uncomfortable with it, because I do like him a lot, and
Yeah.
But our job is to kind of just give our perspective on how things are being run. What puzzles me is they just don't ever take any of this conversation head on. You know what I mean? Like Doug should be on your guys' show, like having a real talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of being at the podium getting chippy with reporters late in the season, when anybody dares to kind of question a move that was made, like there were like that type of stuff I don't understand. Obviously, you've been vocal about Vivek's choice to not, excuse me, do interviews. I had someone text me the other day. They were trying to dig up to see if it was accurate, like the last time Vivek did like a lengthy basketball related on record interview. And it literally might've been when I spoke to him for USA Today, like a decade ago.
Wow.
So, that and Monty McNair wasn't, he would do interviews, but he was, he's not part of that conversation. So I don't know. That part I don't understand why they don't at least try to handle this conversation.
It is just to close the door on that, move on to other playoffs, Jason. But look, it is interesting. Have we heard a press conference schedule for Doug at all?
Not that I know.
Nothing. I mean,
I know it's happening, but no, not yet.
This is a little different. I admit it's a little bit different than, if De'Aaron Fox got traded, but we're seeing this, I don't know, habit, if you will, of generally it's you make the announcement, the next day you get the email for the press conference, you have the press conference, you move on. And I'm not saying they're averse to a press conference. A lot of people were wondering why we wanted one. Well, the reason is if you saw, and now in retrospect, it's a little fun. Not fun's the wrong word, to look at the Monty press conference, who looked like, he was a hostage holding up a newspaper. And you look at it, I went back and watched it about painful. 3 days ago. And in the light of what's gone down, you can clearly see you've never seen Monty look like that before. You've never seen him respond like that before. I would pay dollars to know what was going through his head, but clearly there was a disconnect. I just don't know what the PR strategy here is, Sam.
Well, in fairness to the PR department,
and I'm not ripping. I'm sorry, Sam. PR department. Yeah,
I'll help you clean that up.
Thank you.
Like every PR department, to a large extent, is at the behest of the people they work with.
Yes.
So one thing, and I cracked on Vivek for not doing a press conference after the Mike Brown firing, and still think that would have been. He's the one who did it, so logically, I'd like to hear from him. But
right,
Monty was the one who didn't want to do a press conference again because he wasn't behind the move.
Right.
But, there are I have since talked to other people around the NBA, experienced front office executives who say that was the wrong move. Like you just got to do the press conference, even if your owner made the move. So that's a fascinating discussion, on the side. As in terms of, the PR stuff, look at Scott Perry's press conference. Scott is a willing participant who knows that being as transparent as possible is the way to go. And that's how he chose to handle his first press conference. I texted people. I wasn't there. I was in LA at the time. And I was texting reporters joking about how I'd gone from criticizing the Kings for not having press conferences to watching the Scott Perry one going, my God, is this thing ever going to end? It was so long.
Right.
It was good. It was really good, but he was up there for all the questions, so that, like Doug not talking so far, that could change.
Yeah.
Or doing this type of media. I'm going to assume that he's playing a big part in the way that he's handling his own voice. So kind of both sides of the coin there, I guess.
Thank you for saying that, because I want to.
Yeah,
the Kings PR department's fantastic.
Absolutely.
They really are.
Yeah.
I meant when I say PR, thank you for cleaning it up, because truly they've always been nothing but kind to us, and they work their tails off. Go ahead, Jason.
Sam, do want to get a couple playoff thoughts last night. The congrats to the T-Wolves. I think that's probably the headline, but I know a lot of people, the story is the Lakers getting eliminated.
This is terrible radio. I'm going to hit the rewind button and close the loop completely on the last thing.
Yeah.
Dave, the owner has got to empower everybody.
Yeah.
Including PR.
That's exactly right.
That's where it goes back to the owner. It's like, every team in the league gets tired of media people raving about the Warriors because they're very good at PR. And like, any PR person listening in the NBA, I just made their stomach turn because they get tired of hearing about the Warriors' exceptionalism with PR. But the massive factor is that Joe Lacob allows Ray Ritter and his staff to do their job, and to say, no, you know what, pick it, Mike Dunleavy, you don't want to do a press conference. That's the wrong move. We're doing a press conference. But that starts at the top.
There are very few jobs in sports worse than being a front-facing or a PR person that is forced to go out and sell an idea that they either don't support or they know is wrong. You can only say so many times, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea. If the owner overrules it or whomever above you overrules it, you got to go out and look people in the eye. And what you can't do is say, yeah, I disagree with this, but it's their call. So
you got to wear it.
Thank you, Sam. Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, no worries. Just that on the Lakers, I guess, getting eliminated. Your thoughts on that? JJ Redick and LeBron, just the whole crew. Obviously, they had bigger goals and dreams, and still may get there next year. But the way it ended for them last night,
yeah, not good. The computer screen to my left here has a bunch of words that will eventually be up on the Athletic website about the Lakers' demise. We're currently crafting our it's obit season, if you will, and the Lakers one is the latest. A pretty terrible ending for them, and a lot of layers to it. JJ Redick had a fantastic first season as a head coach, still got rave reviews at the end from LeBron James and Luka Doncic, but is square in the spotlight today because of his part in the finish. His I don't know if you call it bold or some are just going to say dumb or risky move to play the same five guys for the entire second half in game 4. A move that, when you turn the TV on and former players, former coaches are all saying, oh no, that was a terrible mistake. That gets your attention. So a lot of heat on JJ. And you talk about people getting chippy in press conferences. The optics of his pregame press conference yesterday were pretty bad when he got asked about it and got upset. So you have the JJ stuff. You have Luka. There's a lot. I don't know what direction you guys feel like going, but there's, it'll be an interesting summer. LeBron's got to figure out what he wants to do. A, how long do you want to play? B, do you just pick up the option on your contract for next season, run it back and retire next summer? Or if he wants a new contract, I'll be reporting this, that that's going to have to be a conversation with the Lakers. They want to make sure he's happy, make sure that he really wants to be there. And like always, there's a little bit of a never say never component. Does he think about jumping somewhere else to head off into the sunset retirement wise? Luka also has contract stuff. He's extension eligible, and everybody has assumed he's going to sign it, but the Lakers are not going to stop losing sleep until he does, because, while they got rave reviews for getting him in the trade, the one thing everybody always kind of glossed over, it was like it didn't come with any assurances that Luka was going to be there long term. People assume he will because it's the Lakers, but I know I'm too long of an answer, but their Dwight Howard cautionary tale back in 2013 is always something that they remember, and they certainly would like to avoid that with Luka. So we'll see what happens here.
Well, stay tuned. Coming up next week, we will spend both segments on what this means for LeBron James's legacy with our good friend Sam Amick. Good stuff, Sam, as always. I look forward to people yelling at us in the YouTube comments, and have yourself a wonderful weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. Oh, by the way, sorry. Hey, you can go into settings. I believe that's Slack, and you can turn off audio notifications for when people message you.
Sorry.
Have a good rest of your day, and say hello to the dog.
I want to turn off dog barking.
Right. Take care, brother. That's Sam Amick of The Athletic. We are